Good evening, Somers, and welcome to the Somers Town Board regular meeting of Thursday, August 15th, 2019. If you'd please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, and be seated. We can do that. Well, we're going to do a roll call.
Okay, that's true.
Patty, roll call.
Councilman William G. Faulkner.
Here?
Councilman Richard G. Clinchy.
Present.
Councilman Anthony J. Sirico.
Here.
Councilman Thomas A. Garrity Jr. Supervisor Rick Morrissey.
Present. Okay, well, I want to first of all welcome everyone here this evening. I know it's tough coming out on a summer evening, but we do have air conditioning, so that's a positive. We're here to discuss and open a public hearing on the potential opening of a sewer district, number 2 for the town of Somers, which specifically would impact the lake communities of Shenorock and Lincolndale. So with that in mind, I'm going to make a motion to open the public hearing.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. So moved. Patty, if you would give us publishing and posting.
That was published in the Somers Record and posted on the town clerk's bulletin board on August 1st.
Thank you. Okay, so we're going to begin the public hearing with a presentation by the town engineering consultants. And I just want to preface the presentation, and I speak for the board because we've been working on this process for quite some time. But years ago, and this will be covered in the presentation, 1998, the New York City DEP deposited millions of dollars with the county of Westchester. Part of those funds that were given to the county were earmarked for communities, specifically 5 communities, Somers being one, and specifically to improve water quality in Lincolndale and Shenorock. Since 1998, those dollars have been sitting there, not being utilized. But as of late, North Salem, Bedford, and some other communities are now drawing down those funds. And I felt incumbent upon myself as the supervisor representing the best interests of the town and the town board doing our due diligence that we would put together a water quality improvement program, which in this case, in this public hearing we'll be specific about, is the formation of a sewer district. As you all are well aware, at least in Shenorock, our first phase of the water quality improvement that we did was just completed. We received an $850,000 stormwater grant. We put in stormwater retrofits around Lake Shenorock, so no longer will stormwater and runoff go directly into the lake and pollute it. We have a long way to go to recapture that lake, but there's a commitment here at the town board to do that. And with that, let's begin the presentation on our Somers Sewer District. I'd like to introduce Joe Barbagallo from Woodward and Curran.
Thank you, Rick. Can everybody hear me in the back? Thank you. I see some heads nodding, so thank you. Good evening. Thanks for coming out. I see a lot of familiar faces, and it's nice to finally get to this point. I know we've been interacting with the community for about 2 years now, so I'm looking forward to the presentation and hearing some comments and moving the project forward. You know, Rick is right. The lakes in town have been increasingly eutrophying. I think we can see that. That's quite evident in Lake Shenorock. We also now start seeing those impacts starting to affect Lake Lincolndale. I know, like, for example, there was some blue-green algae blooms in Lake Lincolndale that caused the health department to shut the lake down, right? These are the kind of things that happen when you have water quality issues. So I really applaud the town for starting and moving in this direction. I am a resident of town, so even though I don't live in these communities, I think it's a great thing for the town itself. You know, because of the town's commitment to the lakes, as Rick just went through, we as the town started implementing a couple of years ago a three-pronged strategy towards improving and reinvigorating the lake and the lake communities. Those three prongs really included improved water quality around stormwater. So Rick just referenced a project that we used in Shenorock to help advance that initiative, removing phosphorus and sediment from stormwater runoff entering Lake Shenorock, right? So that is an example of the kind of things we would do in that prong to improve water quality from surface water runoff. Second prong is around improving water quality relative to wastewater discharges. Septics leak, septics get into the ground. You have a handout that talks a little bit about, you know, the amount of density that EPA looks at as high density, and we're obviously well above those areas, and we have fractured bedrock conditions, and those contaminants can find their way into the lake, and we see what happens over time when you look at lakes like, you know, Lake Shenorock. And the third prong is around recreation. And we've been working with the community, a couple community groups. We've formed the LWRP, which is the Local Waterfront Revitalization Program Committee. I know our next meeting, I think Stacy just reminded me, is September 19th, so I'll be looking forward to getting together with the group then. And over the last couple of years, the town has really taken an approach of more or less sitting in the back of the room and listening to the community members and listening to what's important to the community, and help trying to advance those initiatives in all three of those prongs. We're here tonight to talk about one key aspect of that, which is the sewers. Sewers will be a great way to improve water quality, remove those nutrients from the ground that are finding their way into the lake, and set us on a path towards being able to really protect the lake from wastewater discharges. So let me talk a little bit about where we are. Rick started this by referencing, it took us a long time to get to this point, right? 1998, $68 million was put in a fund with Westchester County from the DEP. That fund, as Rick mentioned, was earmarked to certain projects. In 2006, the Northern Westchester Watershed Committee earmarked $10 million to sewer Shenorock in Lincolndale. Okay? So the town started looking at this back in, and the Northern Westchester Watershed Committee has recommitted those funds back in 2016 and most recently in 2019. So all of the communities in Westchester County are behind moving this project forward. That's what the Northern Westchester Watershed Committee is. It's a group of all the supervisors and representatives of the county that are administering these funds, and they're all in favor of directing this money towards the town of Somers and continue to be that to improve water quality. Both Lake Lincolndale and Lake Shenorock are on the impaired waterways list, so that's an important point, and that opens us up for opportunities around grant funding, which we'll talk more about in a little bit. You know, earlier this summer, so I'm sure many folks are thinking about, well, 1998 and 2019, there's a lot of time has passed. And haven't we spent this money? And why haven't we built our sewers? And why haven't we moved forward, you know, with these funds? A lot of it has to do with the historic barrier that's been in place, a political barrier at the county level. See, in order for these projects to move forward, the county has to expand its sewer district for its wastewater treatment plant in Peekskill in order to be able to accept this waste, the wastewater. The town has been prepared to send wastewater for a while. In I don't know the exact date, it was approved in 98, but when the preserves were built, the preserves sewage already goes to Peekskill wastewater treatment plant. But all of the infrastructure that was built in Peekskill, in the preserves, was built to accept and convey the wastewater from Lincolndale and Shenorock. So this project, in the way that we're talking about it this evening, has been conceived for decades. And we've been trying to move this forward for decades, but there's been a political hurdle that earlier this summer, we appear to have cleared. Rick, myself, and other representatives of the town board and the town have been meeting with the county and county legislators pretty routinely, including the most recent meeting being yesterday, to move this forward. And now we have support. We were informed at a meeting at the county executive's office earlier this summer that the county executive's office is supportive of moving this project forward and through the Board of Legislators. We were meeting with our key representative, Legislator Koval, who is going to champion this project at the county through the county legislature. And I mean, obviously, the votes need to happen. We are expecting a vote either in November or after budget season in the January, February timeframe. A lot of that has to do with how quickly things move at the State Controller's office and other parts of this process. But you know, but it's a really good thing that was moved. That hurdle, in moving that hurdle, represents the low-cost solution for these projects. We did look at other solutions. Can we pump from both Lincolndale and Shenorock over to Heritage Hills, for example? We looked at what that would look like, we priced that out, and we started looking at what it meant to each of you in your pocketbooks, which we know is a really important factor. By the county making this move and accepting it in this direction is a $1.4 million capital savings, and it will save each homeowner $300 per property on average in annual O&M, because frankly the county O&M is cheaper than Heritage Hills O&M, right? So we're paying less of a buy-in, less infrastructure, and less O&M. So it is the, you know, I know we're going to talk about numbers. Ken is going to go through numbers, and I'm sure there's a wide range perspective on those numbers. But what I will share with you is that what you're looking at is the low-cost solution. And we've tried to keep that as low as possible by introducing grant monies. We are not going to fund this entirely moving forward on your tax dollars. We obviously need matching dollars to move this forward, and that's the numbers that you're looking at, but we're anticipating being able to secure grants to finish all of the future phases of this work. With the existing phase obviously is being done with the $10 million that we already referred to. We call that phase one. The future phases, we're anticipating additional grant monies. We're in the process right now of preparing and submitting our first grant application on that process to the New York State under the Water Infrastructure Investment Act. We're going to be submitting for $3 million, and you know, obviously that's a process that they have to go through and an award, but we obviously feel really strong about you know, about this project because of all the environmental benefits that we've talked about. So I guess you know. And looking into the future, you know, we as a long-term program, there's also other programs that they refer to as WIFIA or water quality improvement programs through the state, as well as other state and local opportunities, as well as once the money that Rick references spent down, there will be additional opportunities with New York City DEP for additional funding. So I wanted to kind of give that backdrop. I'm going to have Ken Kohlbrenner from my office is going to come up and go through the details of the project, walk very slowly through the numbers and how the numbers work. It's really, the goal this evening is for Ken to provide an overview of what we're doing and really very deliberately walk through the finances on the project. This is the first of 3 public hearings. So, you know, there'll be a lot of opportunities, also additional community meetings. I think the community meetings are the best place to get into, you know, details of, you know, my property, my pump, my line, how does that work? And I know we have one coming up next week on August 20th at the, in Shenorock. So I encourage you to come out if you have those detailed questions, and we're looking forward to hearing your thoughts this evening. So with that, I'm going to pass it on to Ken. I'll raise the microphone, and Ken will take it away.
Yeah. Thank you, Joe.
You want to talk about questions at the end?
Yeah, and we're going to go through the presentation, and then we'll take questions at the end and respond to them. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Joe, and thanks everyone for coming out. And we want to walk through, as Joe mentioned, a little bit more detail on the project itself. And so, a little bit of background. We all know Shenorock and Lincolndale. The reason we're talking about this, we're dealing with private septic systems and some of the issues that those present, specifically in these types of lake communities. We have small lot sizes, high groundwater, high bedrock, poor soil conditions that contribute to potential failures, as well as contribute to pollutant loading in the lake. And part of that issue then with failures is, costs of repairs can be substantial depending on what you're looking at, and also really limited in the ability to get an existing septic system in there, or looking at more higher cost advanced treatment units to get the type of treatment needed to help protect water quality. And so what the sewer system or sewer project is looking to do is to eliminate that pollutant load, collect everything to a centralized pump station in each community, and pump, in this case, to the Peekskill sewer system, thereby improving the water quality, reinvigorating the waterfront communities, as well as potentially increasing property values. Having the ability to discharge to a public sewer system does provide benefits to property values in terms of ability to expand potentially beyond what's currently limited by septic systems. So in each community, we are looking at a phased approach for construction of the sewers. As was mentioned, we have an initial allocation of $10 million from New York City DEP that we're looking to use as part of phase 1, which is the green properties in each community. And what that represents is the initial infrastructure. So it's pump station, an initial collection system, force main to the discharge point. In this case, would be going up in both cases to the preserves, 2 different connection points. This was part of what was originally contemplated when the preserves was subdivided, to have that flow from each lake community to the county sewer system. And we had previously looked at going to Heritage Hills. It's just off to the east there of Lincolndale, but that did represent higher additional costs. And so it is great that we have this opportunity we want to take advantage of now to get to the county system to realize that cost savings. And so specifically in Lake Shenorock, we have 68 parcels initially included in phase 1, with the initial $10 million split between the 2 communities. And as we have additional funds, looking to expand that, but targeting on initially what was identified back in 2015 as part of the wastewater study, the core influence zone of potential contamination to the lake, and then extending to the rest of the community from there. Similarly, in Lake Lincolndale, construction of a pump station force main, and looking to target initially those properties close to the lake, and then again expand from there as additional funds become available. And I will say we have a couple of the boards with those figures, probably a little bit easier to see up there, as well as Joe mentioned, we have the August 20th public meeting, and as we continue through this process, we'll continue to have opportunity for engagement, and happy to talk through with you and understand specifically where those lines are, where your property may be in relation to that, and what that means for timing. So, costs. Couple different pieces of that we want to walk through tonight. Initially, there's the capital construction costs. So that's the hard cost of putting the pipe in the ground, building the pump stations, repaving the roads, making the restoration, as well as some of the upfront initial costs of buy-in, design, surveying, geotechnical investigation, making sure we're understanding in more detail what's underneath the ground, so we can build the project and bid accordingly. Initially, there's the buy-in cost to the county. They do require an upfront fee for that they then charge over 10 years. That's built into the annual cost for each parcel. So the annual cost then is the buy-in, as well as O&M costs for each parcel, as well as then, depending on which phase and the timing of it, financing costs as well. And we'll look at what that means for each phase. And the That's what the critical piece of this is, the funding opportunities that we're looking to target. We have presented in the map planner report, which is the document to form the sewer district, the funding levels that we're targeting to be able to maintain the annual cost, the total average annual cost at a certain point. Because if we weren't to have any financing, we'd be talking at a much more significant, probably 3 to 4 times the annual cost that we're talking about. And so the town has committed with their grant consultants to continue to be working toward identifying those funding opportunities. So initially, what we're calling Phase 1 is that initial $10 million allocation for Lincolndale and Shenorock, about 103 parcels total, although we are looking at ways to expand that slightly. We obviously want to get the most number of parcels connected initially, have a good base of flows, make sure we're making good use of that grant money. So the 10 million is what's identified in the map planner report. However, as we are applying for additional grant funding, we are looking at ways to extend that. And so potentially, if we're successful with the $3 million of WIA funding, could it even extend that into a $13 million project? So increase what we're doing initially with Phase 1. And we're working through, what that would look like right now, but has the potential to provide even up to an additional 50 parcels as part of Phase 1. So doubling the number of connections that we can provide for about a third of the cost. And so we're really starting to see the economy of scale that we can realize once we have that initial infrastructure constructed. And part of that initial phase will be 100% financed. So if we have $10 million from DEP, we're doing a $10 million project. If we have $10 million plus $3 million from WIA, we're doing a $13 million project, or somewhere in between, depending on where that funding may fall. What we're calling Phase 2A would be the balance of Lake Shenorock. And there you see it's a much larger project because we're talking about a sizable number of properties. We've about increased almost tenfold the number of properties connected in Shenorock. And so total costs on the order of $28 to $30 million. And we've identified in the map planner report that we would target a funding amount of about 18 to 20 million, again, depending on what that Phase 1 project ends up being. We have a financing of about $8 to $10 million. And that will become important, as we'll see in the impact on the annual cost. Similarly, in Lake Lincolndale, a little bit smaller community, but still a sizable project cost of $21 to $22 million. Funding grant amounts of $16.5 to $17.5 million, and financing of $3.5 to $4.5. And so all total, if we're talking about providing sewers for the entire sewer district, all of Lake Lincolndale and Lake Shenorock, we're at a $63 million project. So then the annual costs, as we discussed, there's a couple different pieces to that, and there's different impacts depending on the timing and the sequencing of how the project is connected. And so I'll just walk through each one individually and then walk through those different phases, what the impact is. So as mentioned, there's the county buy-in. And so that's based on the assessed value of each property that the county charges is over a 10-year period to buy in for the infrastructure that has been constructed. O&M is both a county portion for maintenance of their collection system in the treatment plant, as well as a town portion for the newly formed sewer district for maintenance of the pump station and sanitary sewers within the district itself. And again, based on assessed value. And so we'll be looking at averages here, but that will vary depending on the assessed value of each individual property, is how the county assesses it. Similarly then, the financing will depend on when the properties are connected. So initially that Phase 1 will have 100% funded. There won't be a financing piece. But then as additional phases are connected, that financing will come into play. So if we're talking about just building Phase 1, as soon as the district is formed, the county buy-in cost is assessed to the entire district. And so that means that all the properties in the district, regardless of whether they are connected to the sewers or not, will pay that annual fee to the county for the buy-in. And again, that's based on assessed value. That's why you see some of that variation, just based on how the properties were included in the phases, but on the order of $170 to $184 average for each parcel. What that does include for properties that are not connected to the sewer system, so that we're outside of that phase one, the county does include a periodic pump out or reimbursement for pump out of the existing septic system. And so that's part of the ongoing maintenance that the properties should be doing to maintain their septic system. And so the county does provide that reimbursement. So then, once the sewer system is up and running, we have the pipes in the ground and properties are connected, that's when the O&M piece comes into play. And so that initial phase one, those initial properties, will be then paying the county and the town O&M cost. Properties that are not yet connected to the sewer system will not pay that O&M, only until such time as they are then connected. And then similarly for financing, as we talked about, if there's no debt incurred with the initial project, there's no financing cost. And so the average annual cost for those properties that are connected in phase one is estimated to be $585 per year. And for properties that are within the sewer district but not connected, $184 per year. And that's what the cost will be until such time as the sewer is extended. So that's then what we've projected forward to a full build out. So this is when all of the properties are online, and this is where we see the financing piece come into play. And that's why it's we've identified the funding amount that is committed to in the map planner report to maintain that total annual cost average per property of just under $1,200 per year. So what that means is when we form the sewer district, we then go apply to the state controller for approval of that rate. They review based on the existing costs as well as the projected cost for the sewer district and approve that. And then that sets the rate. And so the town or the sewer district would be limited to extending those phases to maintain a cost commensurate with what's in the map planner report, so that $1,200 per year. What will likely happen is there will be sub-phases of that future build-out. We're likely not, based on grant opportunities, going to build a $10 million project and then do a $53 million project all at once. We'll be identifying those in smaller sub-phases as funding becomes available. And so that financing amount will vary as those phases are extended, because we won't be incurring that full debt immediately. But those future phases will require financing to then be spread across the district properties. We're going to hold questions, if that's okay, until the end. We'll have an opportunity to do that and respond. So wanted to go through that. Know there's going to be lots of questions. Happy to entertain those. Did want to just talk about kind of next steps of where we are in the process and where we're going. So we're here tonight, August 15th, initial public hearing for formation of the sewer district. We do have scheduled on Tuesday an additional public information session at the Lake Shenorock Clubhouse. We've had several of these in the lake communities as a way to engage more directly, have some more of those direct conversations about specifically what the lateral may look like for your property and how that may be connected. The public hearing will be extended to September 5th and September 12th, again, to make sure we have ample opportunity for that engagement and questions. And then at which point, on the 12th, anticipate forming the sewer district, as well as at the same time submitting the application for WIA funding is actually due the next day. And so want to make sure we're staying on that track to get in and target that $3 million funding to potentially increase the project. From there, would proceed into design and construction, and anticipating that initial phase, design would begin next year, continue through the year, and in 2021, is potentially when we would have that first phase completed, start connecting properties, and then as we're doing that, begin identifying future phases from there.
Thank you, Ken. Okay, at this time, I know we've thrown a lot of information at you. There will not be a test tonight, but possibly on the on our final public hearing on the 12th, when we actually vote on the formation of the district. The mics are open for questions. Your question may help answer the question for many others, so the floor is open. Okay, so hopefully come on up. We have a mic that we can...
There's a mic ready to go down below.
Oh, okay. There's a microphone right on the, if you want to come down with a question.
If it was wireless, I would run it around, but it's not.
Yeah. So when you come down to speak, if you just do identify yourself and your address.
Hi, my name's Paul Mastrantoni from 10 Boxwood Drive. The buy-in, is that a one-time fee? It's really not a, because the way you guys are explaining, you're explaining as a one-time fee. It's not a one-time fee, it's a constant fee. Because you said you have to pay $180 or $170 all the time, or are you paying $170 once? You know, the way he explained it was, you pay once and that was it.
I can answer that. That's easy to answer. Remember, the county invested a lot of money in infrastructure, right? They've paid for their treatment plant. They've paid for those capital expenditures, and the buy-in is established at the county level. It is not one time. It's over a 10-year period. It's $185, $170 to $184 a year, depending upon your assessed value. Those would be the averages for phase one in the overall development. But that is assessed over 10 years. So it's 180, that number, either 170 or 184 on average, but then every year for 10 years. At 10 years, that sunsets. Okay, now, in the event that the county took on additional debt to upgrade that plant, they would spread that across the entire district. Remember, that's not just Somers. There's properties in Peekskill, there's properties in Cortland, in Yorktown, in the preserves, and these communities, right? So whatever additional debt service could potentially be spread out. Right now, the rate is 170, 184. It's going to be a 10-year, and if no additional capital, we would expect that to sunset after 10 years.
All right, I got a couple more questions. Now, if
Why don't we do this from here, and what we do is we'll ask all the questions, and then we can kind of respond to them all instead of back and forth, because that sometimes gets tough.
Oh, no, it's a totally different question, but if you put the first infrastructure in, right, and then what happens if you don't get funding? Just say, you don't get the funding. What's going to happen with everybody else? Or what's going to happen, because like I said, you're making us all pay $174, and the 10 people, whatever, 100 people have that first infrastructure, and you got it in, what happens with everybody else? Just say if something falls apart. You know what I'm saying? I know you're doing it in phases, but it can fall apart. It's,
Yep. Do you have another question? I'll answer that one. I'm just trying to get them all.
Just answer.
Answer them as he asked. We'd rather have that because they're not going to know the question when you're answering it.
We'll certainly repeat the questions. We're just trying to give everyone an opportunity
I'll
to
answer the
speak.
question. It's not that
If you
big
want
a
to
deal.
address the board, you come to the mic. Thank you.
So what would happen in that instance is you would be paying the $170 or $184. The people in phase one would be paying their O&M, and they would be paying their buy-in fee. At 10 years, that buy-in fee would sunset. But the key that not to forget is you will be in the sewer district. That is a major improvement. That is a major benefit, to be in the sewer district, because this is our chance to get in. The county is unlikely to open this door again for us, and it's very important that we get in. So you might be paying that $185. Again, you get your septic pumped out. It's essentially a wash in that cost. If you're outside of phase one, it's a wash in those costs. And you would pay that for 10 years, and then in the future, if it went beyond that, you would still get that benefit for being in the district.
so you pay $185 to get your septic pumped? I don't pay $185.
You would get it as a credit.
Oh,
You would get a credit.
okay.
To be reimbursed.
then-
You'll be
No,
reimbursed. You'll be
you're not
reimbursed.
understanding me. No, let me
No, I
restate that.
understand. I'm just
If you're paying the buy-in fee of $185 or $170 on average, depending upon what areas you are in, okay? The county for that will reimburse you for your septic pump outs every other year, which, yes, are way more than $185.
I'm just asking, yeah.
That's why I'm saying it's a wash. It's usually about $400
Yeah.
to get it done. So when you're doing it every 2 years, which is what you're really required to do, it's essentially a wash in that cost.
And then, I know you guys been doing a lot with the roads, but are you guys gonna, like, if you're putting up certain roads, because, I mean, you guys been doing like blacktop in certain parts of Lincolndale and Shadow Rock, are you gonna blacktop the ones that you're gonna rip up, or you guys are scheduling that? Like, if you're putting sewer, I don't know what road you're going up, but like, if you're going up Juniper or something, are you guys, like, accounting for that? Not gonna spend money and then throw money away because you're ripping it up the next year?
Yeah, we have begun that process of coordinating. As we get into design, that's what we'll be doing, right? I mean, we're not in design right now, we're in conceptual layout. I know Tommy told me, he said, please don't run it down Cypress, I just paved that, and that's why Phase 1 is not going down Cypress.
good point,
So we
Tom.
are trying to coordinate those things, and I think that's an excellent point, and we'll continue to do that.
And do you know how much engineering's gonna cost? Just being curious. Because I know it costs a lot of money when you do stuff, you know?
Yeah, I mean, usually soft costs, I don't like, there's a lot of soft costs that come in on a project, right? It's not just the engineering, there's legal costs, there's surveying costs, there's a lot of other soft costs that come in. Those soft costs, could be on the order of 15% of the total, 15 to, I would say 15% of the.
That's part of the 13.
That's part of all the numbers. That's not extra, that's all included in the numbers that we've talked about.
Okay, all right. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Hi, I'm Robin Anderson, 9 Cypress Lane, and I'm going to be in Phase 1. So the initial cost will be approximately $600 a year. As it expands, do the Phase 1 homeowners pay for the cost of the additional financing, so our cost would go up over time?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, that was it.
Okay.
Hello, my name is Noreen McArdle. I live at 69 Level Street, and I am in Phase 1, and I want to say thank you. I think this is a wonderful and exciting project. I do have a question. Once all of the work is completed and we're going through financing, I think you mentioned it's going to be about $1,500 a year per household. Since you're financing, is that for some finite 10 or 20-year period? And after that's done, do you expect the costs to go down at that point because the financing is complete?
30, right?
We'll be-
So I just had to consult with Ken. We did all of our math based on a 30-year bond.
Oh, okay.
So it's a 30-year bond that, yes, at the end of that, it's paid off, and unless there was more debt taken on for any upgrade or something, then there would be, that it would sunset.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, Lisa Healy. Oh,
Excuse me, wait a minute, before, I just got, Ken just clarified something for me that I thought would be important to mention. We talked about, the first question was around, as the district takes on debt, does Phase 1 contribute towards that debt? And yes, that answer is yes, but as the district grows, the O&M costs are going to come down, right? So as you have more, I mean, the sewer and water district needs a certain number of people to take care of pump stations and pipes, right? So and the pump stations is really where all the work is. So as we add more people, the cost of that per person comes down. So yes, you will be picking up additional financing costs, but your O&M costs will start to come down. So I just wanted to clarify that. Sorry about interrupting you, ma'am.
that's okay. Lisa Healy, I'm at 7 Magnolia Road or Drive, it's different everywhere, in Lake Lincolndale. If we're in the sewer district, do the zoning laws on our homes change? In that, right now, because we're on septics and the number of bedrooms is based on the size of the field. Once we're out of that, does that mean people can just add additional bedrooms because those rules will not be in effect anymore.
That's a good question.
And then a follow-up to that is there is land that's undeveloped. Some parcels are bigger than others in Lake Lincolndale, where you could potentially, with these changes, add additional homes. And then those undeveloped areas, will the ability to build on them change? And then that dramatically changes the type of neighborhood that it is. You know, currently Lake Shinnerock and Lake Lincolndale are the neighborhoods where, you know, the people who are on very fixed incomes, a lot of the homes, they go and move into these neighborhoods because we can afford it. We can afford the taxes because they're lower, and it gives the opportunity for families who may not have as many resources to live there. And the concern is, you know, if you're changing it as a sewer district and other rules change, does it really change the full integrity of the neighborhood?
Thank you.
Question.
So I'll answer the septic question. I think what you meant, we're really talking not necessarily about zoning, because there's no change in zoning, right? So your zoning law says
You're an R10.
you're an R10 zone, you have to have a certain setback from the front yards, a certain setback from the side yards, a certain setback, and they have a zoning code that dictates what you can and can't do on your property. That code that exists today in that regard is the same code that's going to exist after this is done, okay? So as far as the zoning code, there are no changes in the zoning code. Really, when you were speaking about septics, that's really a Westchester County Health Department code, right? So yes, this Westchester County Health Department has some rules and requirements relative to how big your septic needs to be in relation to your number of bedrooms. Given you are not going to be relying on a septic anymore, that criteria goes away. And yes, I would imagine there will be homes that people get that opportunity to add that third bedroom they always wanted to, and they'll be able to do it legally. And so the answer is yes, people can add bedrooms as long as they're inside of the town zoning requirements. Development on any vacant lot is going to be subject to the development regulations, right? I mean, if there's a wetland on it, you're not going to do anything on that lot. Having a sewer in front of the lot does not change other regulations. But if there are other lots that exist that meet the zoning criteria and all other environmental criteria that could support another home, that would be allowed to be done. Now, what wouldn't happen is that individual would have to connect on their own. The $10 million cannot be used to connect any vacant land. It can only be used to connect existing homes. So they would have to, it would be an additional expense that the individual would have to pay to make the connection, but as long as it met all those criteria, it would be allowed to proceed forward.
If I can just add to that, but that's an advantage to the homeowner, obviously. If I own a 2-bedroom home and I'm looking to sell at some point, if I could, because of the sewer district, be allowed to expand that to 3-bedroom, it makes my house a lot more attractive to a potential buyer. And so while there would be monies expended now, there would be profit to be enjoyed later.
Okay. Yes, sir.
Hi, my name is Michael Schwarzschild. I'm part of the team at 69 Lovell Street on Lake Lincolndale. I want to make sure I understand what you mean by the full build-out. You're talking about a fee of $585 roughly initially once things are connected up. Is that for phase 1, 2A, and 2B? When you say full build-out, are you talking about additional communities coming in, or the 3-phase parts, the end of that is when it moves to $1,295 or whatever that was?
When we refer to full build-out, it is full build-out within Lake Lincolndale and Lake Shinnerock, the R10 zones only. There is no anticipation of extending this sewer to other properties. Frankly, that would also be not looked upon favorably by the suppliers of the $10 million.
So the fee would change when everyone is connected, or is there a...
So let me give you an example. So if you're in phase 1, Ken went through the numbers on Phase 1. We're done building Phase 1. We know where we stand. So you're in Phase 1, you know what you're paying. You're paying your O&M, you're paying your debt service, right? No financing. Okay, after Phase 1 is complete, if you're not in Phase 1, you're just paying the buy-in fee for the county, and you get the benefit of the pump out from that, right? So that's what, now, like Ken said, it's unlikely we're just going to do Phase 2A or 2B in one shot. So let's just say we broke that into a 2A1 through 2A3, right? As we do 2A1, and we take on debt, which we'll have to do to provide matching funds to any future grants that we achieve, that will be layered over the entire community, both people that might be in 2A4 and people who are in Phase 1. And then it incrementally increases up until the full build-out, which is when everybody would be paying that $1,200 on average.
Great, got it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, Trish Labella. I live on 30 Lakeview Drive in Shenorock. And we mentioned Lake Shenorock. And we talk like it's everybody in the neighborhood, but there's a lot of people that are excluded. And I will be at the meeting on the 20th, so I can get down to the map. But for those of us that actually live on the lake and were not included, I was wondering if you could give some commentary on how people were assessed. I know there's a line, but there's also a map and topography that comes into play. You have a nice picture on the flyer. That kind of looks like my house in my backyard. And I'm not in either Phase 1 or Phase 2. So I was just wondering if there could be some discourse on maybe looking at properties that are on the lake but not included.
Excuse me, which road do you live on? Did you say Osborne?
Lakeview, right next to Osborne. I'm on the lake at the termination of Ross Drive, the last house before you go down the hill to the pump house. The pipes are on my street, it looks like. It's a little orange line.
Are you in the R10 zone, or are you off of Mancini, on a bigger lot?
It's a bigger lot, but we do have the stormwater easement.
Okay.
That's part of my property that's included in your total head count for R80 or R20.
Okay, so when we drew the line, right, we have to draw a line somewhere, and we drew the line around the R10 zone, which is essentially, by zoning, the small lots.
Right.
Small lots are more constrained, more difficult to do septic. That's frankly where we see most of the septic failures, and in the event there is a septic failure, there's less area to improve those. Where on the larger lots, you have more opportunity to manage your wastewater on your site, right? So that was why the line was drawn the way that it was. Now let me just say, that being said, once the district is formed, okay, once the district is formed, there is opportunities for out-of-district customers to petition and get into the district. Okay,
And,
so
I'm sorry to interrupt, would that be at my cost fully or as part of Phase 2?
I might have to get back down that. My initial reaction is to say that it might be at your cost, but I would want to consult with council and Ken on that.
Okay.
To understand how long it is and what we're talking about in terms of those connections. My initial reaction is that it will be at the out-of-district properties that would like in, they're going to have to contribute at a different level, because I can't really layer costs to connect you from out-of-district on somebody who's in district, right? If I'm paying if I'm spending district money to connect somebody outside the district.
But I'm saying maybe there could be a common sense approach to actually drawing the line for said district. I mean, if you have the map, I can show you.
I'm familiar with the area. So let me take that, and we can maybe talk about that on the 20th. I'll spend some time with council and we'll talk about that.
I know you looked at lot size, but topography and the legal definition of the word steep, right, for the property. If you look at my backyard, it's all going in the lake.
Okay.
No, I think the key is the zoning. The R10 zone is how this project was formulated. It's how we're proposing it to the county. I think the zone, you may be in an R80.
Right, and I think my home, I think, was built with Mancini Drive.
Yeah.
But I think we could take a common sense approach to maybe looking at some of those properties. I don't want to speak on behalf of my neighbors, but I'm the one on the lake.
Yeah, no,
we'll take a look at it.
Logically and geographically, you sit above the lake, it makes a lot of sense that whatever is in your yard is running off is going to wind up in the lake.
It's getting there first.
Right, so
And you'd prefer to be in the sewer district as opposed to not, right?
Yeah, so we're not closing the door on allowing you into the sewer district. That's basically the answer.
What
but not
number
phased.
Lake Drive you said?
30 Lakeview. And I'll be at the meeting on the 20th if we want to, I know that's
Sure.
better for that discussion, but I just want to get it out there so we can have a better discussion on the
Sure,
20th.
we'll have more of an answer for you then.
Thank you.
Okay, perfect,
Made a
thank
good
you.
point.
Hi, Dennis DeSanto, 14 Parkway Drive. I just want to say I've been hearing about this 10 million for the last 15 or 20 years, so I think it's
Us
great.
too, Dennis.
I think it's great that the town is moving forward on this. My question is how do you define the district? How do you define who is in Shannerock and who, it's kind of like a follow-up to the last question, how do you define the boundaries of the district?
It's with the zoning. It's the R10 zone. You know, we kind of ran into that. Last time you and I spent a lot of time together, we were dealing with trying to form the Shannerock Park District.
Right.
And really, ultimately, a lot of that discussion came down to, you know, what's in Shannerock and what's out of Shannerock, what's part of Shannerock and what's not, right?
Is there people that are on the corner of 118 and Shannerock? Are they in? Is it-
Right, so in this instance, we focused in on what was clearly built with the lake community, which was the R10 zone, and the things that came after that are the things that we are not in. So the line was really drawn around the R10 zone. Now, you know, similar to the last comment, to follow up on that, we're going to look into this, and if there was a street of people that wanted in, I can talk to council about if that's something that we can extend, but, you know, if the person at the end wants, but everybody in between, that's where things get tough, right? So that's why we just made a kind of clear delineation around the R10 zone.
Okay, and R10 is?
10,000 square foot lots.
Got it.
Quarter acre lots.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, Michael Ross from 8 Evergreen Drive over in Lincolndale. I had two kind of separate questions. The first one is, from the presentation earlier, there was some ideas that they might be able to complete phase 1 by the end of 2021. Is that about right?
2021, we think that phase 1, if everything moves according to plan, by this time in 2021, we're hopeful that toilets will be flushing through pipes and heading over to Peekskill, yes.
All right. Building off of that, obviously I'm not asking for promises, but just best guess, when would the second part be finished?
That's a great question. As soon as we get through this process and presuming the town board decides to move forward, we're having a meeting immediately at the end of before the end of September with our grant consultant, and we'll be laying out a comprehensive financial strategy for the, detail. We already have a conceptual strategy, but getting into detail. Our goal is to apply for funding every single year. So we're not going to take a year off. While we're designing and building next year, we'll be preparing grant applications. We'll apply for the Water Quality Improvement Program funds in June of next year. We'll apply for the Water Infrastructure Improvement Act funds in September of next year. And we will always be looking for funds along the way. The goal is, numbers are only going to go up, right? It's only going to get more expensive to build things, right? So we obviously would like to get this done and pace it in a way that there can be a continuous cycle of building going on every year until this is built. Now, there's a big if around getting outside funding to help do that, because we're trying to keep the costs down for all of you, and so I can't I can't determine how or predict how grant applications are going to be reviewed and received and funded, but the town's intention is to march forward one phase after the next.
I guess just to kind of clarify where I was coming from, there's been great discussions on the money, and I'm far too new to the area to know what a regular budget for this town and type projects go for. I was, however, my hometown up in Massachusetts, I was around when they were putting a septic system into my area, and it took
sewer system.
Sewer system. I'm so sorry. Yes, thank you. I was around when they were putting the sewer system and we were switching over, and for a good handful of years, there were giant cement cylinders just hanging out on the side of the road as part of construction. Sometimes they could do construction, sometimes they couldn't. when I'm looking at this map, I see that Phase 1 includes 3 out of the 4 routes out of Lincolndale. There's only, 4 roads getting out of Lincolndale onto Lovell. So is that going to be completely cut off due to construction for how many years before I even get the benefits of being on the sewer system myself? That's really the bulk of why I was asking that question. Do you have any, I'm not asking for promises, but just thoughts.
Well, remember, after we build Phase 1, we're done, right? And we're going to enter into a construction contract with a contractor to start and finish in an expedited way, right? I mean, this is probably, I don't know, 8, we'll have areas dug up for probably 8 months. It probably will be a full year where that'll be dug up. But once we're out of Phase 1, that road should be no more construction on that road, and we'll move to the next road. And then, yes, there'll be construction on the next phase for a certain period of time. And and of course, one of the important factors, part of my job on this is to make sure that those roads remain passable. Every contractor will be responsible to submit a traffic plan to make sure that we obviously can maintain all of the required traffic movements and emergency access and egress.
All right, I think that was it. Thank you.
All right, I'd like to comment on future financing. As was mentioned in the presentation back in 1998, the New York City Department of Environmental Protection gave $68 million to Westchester County to improve water quality. That money stayed there. It was used for water quality, smaller projects. Town of North Salem, 2 years ago, I think maybe even 3 years ago, they drew down their $10 million. They applied for other grants, and they were able to sewer Peach Lake. So those funds were used. What I have seen over the last 2 or 3 years, Bedford now has put in a viable project where they're going to now, they actually bought the correctional institution's sewer treatment plant, and they are going to sewer the Katona schools and the downtown Katona area. So they've drawn down their $10 million and applied for other grants to bolster their program. So if the town of Somers ever needed any initiative to put a program together, it's now. The county executive has said he is in full support, or his staff has told us they're in support of what we're proposing and our future sewer plans. This Northern Westchester Watershed Committee that I chair, like Joe mentioned, is made up of supervisors from Northern Westchester, and we are to draw down this fund. Right now, there's maybe $30 million left in it. New York City has told us they are not going to grant any more money to the county until this initial fund is depleted. So if Somers gets their project through, Yorktown gets their project through, and Newcastle gets their project through, then the county executive has said he will now turn around and go to New York City and say, okay, you have placed an obligation on Northern Westchester to protect your water supply. Now, we've also done projections. I think it's somewhere upwards of $140 million to sewer these communities that we're charged with. The town of Somers is in the midst of 4 different watersheds. So New York City, our county executive will go to New York City and say, you need to make an investment in protection of your watershed. Because right now, you can drive south of Lake Shenorock and see algae blooms. You can drive down 100 and look over the bridge. You'll see algae. Those are all caused by septic and nitrogen entering into the water bodies. They're concerned about phosphorus. We've gotten grants to reduce phosphorus in our water supply, in their water supply. So I think the message I want to leave you with is this $10 million, we're going to finance totally and you'll only be responsible, as we talked about, O&M, Phase 1. Phase 2, look, if we get another bucket of money from New York City, and we get a grant, and we get an EFC, which is the Environmental Facilities Corporation Quality Improvement Funds, if we get more grants from that, we want to cut costs wherever we can. And we pay a full-time grant consulting company that's continually looking for grants, and they've been very successful for us. So kind of a long-winded explanation, but we're not done looking for grants to sewer in northern Westchester.
I just want to say that the unspoken is that people are competing for these funds. So what this sewer district does is essentially lays down a plan that just puts a stake in the ground that says we're serious about doing something here, and those funds will be allocated to us as they were previously contemplated. But if we don't act, be rest assured that there are going to be other communities and other towns that are going to want to secure those funds.
Yeah, sure. This money should have been spent earlier. You get more for your money. We'd spent it earlier. So for a variety of reasons that were discussed, that's, water under the bridge, so to speak. But if we do this right, everybody gains. So what's the purpose of this? Protecting the New York City water supply. We are in that area. And the people in Westchester, some of them being in our area, who draw from those reservoirs. And that's why New York City DEP, that's who's in charge of protecting their water supply, says, look, we're not just going to tell you to do it, we're going to give you an incentive to do it. So that's why they put out the money. Now, in doing that, can we help the town so we can help New York City and everybody who gets that water, but also help the individual homeowner by leveraging that money? And that's really the purpose of what we're talking about here. That in the long run, it benefits New York City and the water supply. Everybody's in favor of that. Water and the quality of water in the future is going to be an increasingly important issue in our area and all over the world. But also, it helps the individual homeowner because your home is worth more money as you go forward, because people want to buy homes that have sewers with them. Now, getting to that point where everybody's win-win, where the city wins, the town wins, the individual homeowner wins, that's what requires that it be done right, and that we keep scrupulous oversight over the plans, and your feedback, of course, by all the people in the area who are directly affected by that will be important for that, to make sure that the right things are done and that the costs are carefully monitored.
I just want to reinforce what Joe pointed out in his presentation, that one of the political, I wouldn't say barriers, but Rubicon's goals was to get connection to the Peekskill sewer districts.
Right.
So that still requires right now approval by the town legislator, who Legislator Colville is going to support. And Rick's been down there, and they've essentially said, yep, we like this idea, we're going to support this idea. So it's very highly likely that's going to pass. But that's that was a political Rubicon that we had to pass, and still is open.
Right, it still has to pass 9 county legislators, and believe me, we have 2 from Somers. So 7 other legislators have to be convinced this is a good use of the EOH funds that the county is holding for water quality. Sir.
We'll get the votes.
Yeah, how you doing? My name's Mike Griffin. I'm 20 Larch Drive, and that's where the main line's going to go right through. But we're going to be in the Phase 2B. So it's
Sir, would you just pick up the mic a little so we can hear you? Thanks.
Yeah, so I'm on 20 Larch Drive, and that's where the main line goes through. Okay. So, and we're going to be in Phase 2B. But my question is, what would be the cost from the homeowner connecting to the sewer itself? We're responsible for a contractor hooking it up?
So, in Phase 1, right now, when we talk about 100 and change properties that we're connecting across both communities, we're assuming as part of that cost calculation, that we will bring the pipe onto your property. Now, that's going to require you to enter into an easement agreement with the town. We'll bring it within 5 feet of your foundation on the street side of your home. You'll be responsible for that last 5 feet and any plumbing inside your house, but the town is seeking to make that as least cost as possible to the homeowner. I mean, the town obviously can't go into your foundation and start doing that, but we're going to basically bring it up to within 5 feet of your foundation to keep those costs down as much as possible. And we've also included in our estimates the decommissioning of your existing septic tanks as part of that. So as we move into future phases, we have to balance the money available. I mean, if we can get the full $38 million, the numbers that are in that report, the $63 million total includes hooking everybody up in that same way. All right? If we get challenged with grant money, we might have to have conversations with the public about maybe shifting that a little bit. But as we stand right now, the plan is $63 million for the total project. Everybody gets a pipe on their property within 5 feet of their foundation to try to keep your costs down.
Do you have any average cost of what it would cost the homeowner to hook up?
From that point in?
Yes.
I don't have that. We can get you that number, though. We can make an estimate of that number for you. We'll talk to some plumbers. I just don't want to shoot from the hip on it.
And being on Larch Drive with all the main construction there, and how will they, when they open up the road and close it up at night for access, or?
It'll be plated, I'm sure. There'll be a measurement protection, maintenance and protection of traffic plan that'll be obligated to make sure that, of course, everything is passable. We'll, typically require them to work in sequences so there's no more than one lane closed at any given time, and there's traffic, people directing traffic when there's open trenches, and then when it's closed up, there's a plate goes on so that you can have traffic pass.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Jay Batchelor, 8 Ross Drive. Are you paying for the pumps? A third of us are going to be on pumps in Shenorock.
It's part of the...
Was there a question there?
No.
No, he said...
Are you, Jay Batchelor, Ross Drive, 8 Ross Drive, are you people paying for the pumps?
Yes. And the
third
maintenance.
of us are...
And the maintenance thereof.
Pardon?
And the maintenance thereof is all included in as part of these calculations.
Not from a pump from your house, though, if you have to pump it out of
No,
your
if there's a
house.
grinder pump those are typically located in a way, Ken, you confirmed, but we were assuming that the O&M, that we'd be typically taking care of those grinder pumps, correct? Yes. So there's no additional O&M. The town will take care of them and provide them. You just have to give us an easement and access to do so.
Are you people going to be doing any polling with the voters as to whether or not, how we feel about this as a group? You're raising our taxes about $1,200 a year for 30 years for openers.
That's not a question for me. At this point, we do, we have a public hearing process, and I'm sure the board will be listening to input and make determinations like that as part of the town board process. I'm just the engineer. I don't answer questions like that.
Well, I guess I'm asking the supervisor that.
Yeah, well, this is why we have a public hearing. We want to hear from your perspective. And basically what we've laid out here is the fact that these two lake communities are on small R10 zone parcels, and it's not a matter of if or when it's going to affect your groundwater and your water quality. It's already happening. Shenorock Lake has been inundated. You can almost walk across it now. There's algae blooms there all the time. Fortunately for Shenorock, you're on a water supply, but the density of homes there, as shown in one of the slides, is considered high-density use for septic systems. Lincolndale, on the other hand, little smaller community, but they're not on a community water supply. So I would recommend in the near future, everybody should be testing their water supply there to find out if there's any contaminants, because they're in the same situation of having R10 small properties. So it's a matter of, I, as the supervisor, felt my due diligence was to try to claim our $10 million and get it applied to putting infrastructure into our two lake communities. Our future plans are to expand it, our sewer project over to the other lake community and the historic district. But yeah, it's for the better good of the communities. So that's our answer.
Is there any chance that you might be able to get grants to help us with that 30 million nut you're giving us? Over and above the 20 you're looking for?
Yeah, well, like I said, that's what we're paying a grant writer to do. We have a WIA grant that was just talked about that we're going to be going after. Should we form the district, we're going to try to add about $3 million to it. That's this year. Every year there's a grant cycle, and we've been teed up every year with a project. Last year, or 2 years ago, we were awarded $850,000 to put in that stormwater retrofit around the lake that you saw go in.
An aerator and sterile carp would have been a nice addition, too.
Well, you know what I would like to see there? I would like to see Shenorock dredged.
Mm-hmm.
I would like to see the water quality improvement. This is the first step in addressing getting that lake back to a healthy status.
Right, and let me just add to what the supervisor just said is, as it relates to dredging the lake, for example, there is grant money available to do that, but we will not get under the Water Quality Improvement Program funds, but we will not get access to that until we've demonstrated that we're handling all of our upland contaminants. So we've handled that now in Shenorock on the stormwater side. This project will allow us to handle that on the wastewater side, which will put us in a position to go and apply for grant money to pay for the dredging of that lake, and hopefully one day be able to get it back to where it was as a fully vibrant lake and lake community. And you know, I still want to make Dennis's dream come true and have people swim in there one day again. We'll see about that. That's going to require dredging and a lot of things to line up. But to the supervisor's point is that this project is part of a bigger approach to revitalize the community, so it's an important piece of that. And I just wanted to reinforce the dredging aspect and the importance of handling upgrading contaminants in order to be able to get other people to pay for that.
But, sir, I understand your point, which is that obviously you're talking about money, and if you have a close budget, that's tough. What's the alternative, though, is to wait for the lakes to die and affect water quality. And even if you don't care about New York City and the people who drink from it, you know, it's not the future. So there is going to be some, you know, like most good things in life, some short-term pain, but long-term gain. And that's why it's so important that we leverage the money that's available now before someone else, some other town, takes it. We've been advised by Mike Kaplowitz to do it now, and then to increase that by pursuing as vigorously as possible, more vigorously than we have in the past, alternative forms of funding through grants. But as Joe said, until we take care of that first problem of your lakes are dying, why would we give you more money? You know, we won't get more grants for that. So I understand your question. I understand your concern. I would share that too. I don't know what the alternative would be, though, sir. You know, I just don't see what there's a better plan.
Fish and aerator wouldn't hurt.
That certainly would be a good help. Yeah, it won't solve the problem, but it would help. Yeah.
I feel as though it's such an inexpensive help that you just don't feel like kicking in $1,000 for a bunch of fish.
Mm-hmm.
It's approved. It's been, it's okay. Number of measures approved. Need to put a block across the dam so they can't get out, and that's all we got to do.
Okay, so I would encourage you to come to one of the community meetings.
Try.
We can add that to the list of things we want to get accomplished. Yes, sir.
Joe Luciano, 10 Walker Drive. His one question was, his house is downhill of what would be the sewer in the street, so he's going to have a pump, and he wants to know who's going to maintain that pump, not the pumps in the street that move it to higher ground, but from his house. So that's what
I understood that.
Okay. So what's the answer?
It was the answer I gave, which is that the town will pay for and maintain those pumps. Grinder pumps required to get your wastewater into the town's pipes will be taken care of and paid for by the town.
Forever? In other words, moving
As
forward?
part of the O&M on the project, they will be paid for as part of the O&M on the project moving forward, yes.
What is the assessed value that you're using for your cost example?
I will tell you that it is basically the average and the median, but I'll give you the exact number. Hold on, I got to turn and look to Ken. Hold on.
Okay.
You know what the number is, the actual assessed value? All right, we'll have to, I think that's in the report, but we can dig that out for you, and I just don't have it at my fingertips right now.
Okay.
But I can tell you the numbers that we're presenting it's a representation of both the median, meaning the person in the middle of all 1,000 properties, and the average assessment of all those 1,000 properties.
Well, I'd still like to know the number. All right, you drew the line. Now, if you walk the streams, because if you've walked the streams, you have houses that have property which includes the stream in their property or next to their property, which when you look at their house, they're so low that it's obvious their septic is going into the stream, yet you don't have them on the map.
Don't have them on the map or don't have them in the phase one? I'm just.
You don't have them in phase 1 or 2.
The district boundaries, as I said, had to be drawn somewhere, and they were drawn around the R10 zone, and so therefore only properties in the district are those in the R10 zone.
Okay. On the street I live in, there's 4 homes that weren't included in the sewer district. How do you go down the street and you're including 3/4 of the houses and not the rest? If you're looking to protect the waterways like you're talking about, and these houses abut the stream.
Excuse me, which is
Walker
this Walker Drive?
Walker Drive.
I would have to look specifically. We can go. My suspicion is it's not in the R10 zone.
Okay, but how are you looking to protect the waterway if those houses are right on the streams?
We have to pick a spot to draw the line. We drew the line around the R10 zones. Lots that are larger lots are going, if they have leaking septics, are going to have a better opportunity to repair those septics on those lots. We talked about people out of the district and their opportunities. If those individuals would like to get in the district, we can have those conversations once the district is formed. It is about protecting the lake. There's a lot of water that flows in from all over. This could be even more complicated if we tried to sewer the entire town to do that, right? We had to draw the line somewhere. It was drawn around the R10 zones because those are the most critical areas and the most likely to fail and have the lowest opportunity for remediation on existing land in those parcels.
What is the opportunity if you have a large lot and you're in the R10 district and you don't want to be in the sewer plan?
None. Are you saying, is there an opt-out provision?
Yes.
We have not contemplated an opt-out position at this point. I can speak to council about that, but if you're in the R10 zone, you're in the R10 zone, and you don't have to give the town permission to connect you. And if you chose to do that in the future, if you had a failing septic and you wanted, you'd incur the cost to connect on your own. So we're trying to make it as cost-effective for everybody. I can't connect to everybody. We're connecting inside of the R10 zones and trying to do our best to protect your lake.
Thank you.
But if let's say I'm a guy there or a woman there who has just cleaned out my septic and it's like spanking clean. I've just spent that money. I could see where you say, look, I don't want to do this now. I could save some money by doing it. Maybe somebody who buys my house wants to connect. But the fact that they can connect does make my house then more valuable because I'm in the sewer district, even if I don't do it now. So there is an advantage to it, I think.
I have to.
your theory about someone's house always being worth more today due to the new tax laws with the SALT, okay? I'm already assessed high. I already pay high taxes. If you add that number, you're going to add me at the top, the highest part, because that's where my assessed value is. That's why I asked you what your assessed value is. I have a large piece of property. I have more than enough room for septic. My septic's a modern system, not an old system. It costs a lot of money to put in because it was a modern system. And now I feel I'm going to be penalized at a very high rate when you have someone else who bought a house for 200 grand and never did anything to their property or their septic, and they're going to get in for 1,200 bucks.
Yeah, that SALT is a ridiculous ridiculous part of the law because you're paying double tax. You're paying tax on the tax that you pay to the town and the state and the county. So I agree with you there. And you say in that particular instance, you say, well, it's not working out really fair for me. And you might be right in the short term. In the long term, I would bet you're going to make money, though.
No, because my taxes will be higher, so my house will be worth less.
Okay, but you can expand into the sewer and you can expand your number of bedrooms. But, you know, look, you could debate that all day. Maybe you're right.
Okay, is there anyone else here that would like to make a comment on the presentation or your concerns? Okay, if not,
Looks like we have one more.
She does, yeah.
Go right ahead.
Vicki DeSanto, 14 Parkway Drive. I'm in favor of this, but the 2nd September meeting, who is voting on that? Like, because if we are unable to attend that, are we voting, or are we just giving the town board? Okay, so I'm...
Yeah, I was just about to explain that.
Yeah,
Oh.
go ahead.
We're on the same page. All right, that was my comment. Thank you.
Okay, so first the call was, is there anyone else that wants to make a comment? Okay, hearing, sir?
It looks like we have one here, Rick.
Yeah, I see.
Hi, Dan Backman, 6 Overhill Road.
You want to just closer to the mic? I don't
Dan Backman, 6 Overhill Road. I'm concerned as to how many people are in the red zone. My understanding is everything on the maps that are in red are going to have these pumps that you're saying are going to be maintained and, you know, by the town. Where on the property is the town going to put these pumps? Are they talking putting them a couple of feet off the foundation or out by the road? Where is that going to be built?
Yeah, so typically they'd be near the existing where your existing septic tank is.
I have 2 septic tanks, one on each side of my home, so you're going to put 2
You're
pump systems in?
probably going to have to pick one, right? And probably replumb on the inside of the home. I would, you know, probably if you have one in the front of the property, we would connect up in that area, and you know, you would probably need to replumb inside your house to get all your wastewater going in that direction.
Okay. Is there any possibility of redrawing what they propose as far as maybe putting in larger pump stations for the town to operate off of rather than every single home on the south end of Lake Shenorock? I mean, that's not where my house is. I would like to see a bigger pump station that would contain maybe the 6 or 8 houses near mine that would pump up the hill as opposed to everybody having their own injector pump.
So what, I mean, there's many different ways to lay out a septic sewer system. What you're talking about would result in more pumps, more large pump stations. Believe it or not, you know, that's not always the most efficient way to do it. We really laid this out in a way that we felt was going to drive the most value for the dollar.
Right.
But we're not. We're going to move into final design, and things are going to shift around when we get into final design. We may find less rock than we anticipate, and we can connect more homes. We may, be in a position where, as based on our experience moving through, when we get to those areas, we say, you know what, maybe we can hook up this in a different way. Right now, we believe that what's shown is going to be the most economical way. It is quite routine. You know, Rick mentioned Peach Lake, and Ken did Peach Lake. What is Peach Lake? Half? How many on grinder pumps? 460 people are on grinder pumps there, and it's not. My point is, this is relatively routine to put somebody on a grinder pump.
Yorktown is set up that way with those small ejector pumps
Yeah.
that all shoot out, and I don't know, they have a lot of issues with them as far as I know too. So I see the towns that have bigger pump stations that all the houses flow gravity into, from my experience, have less issues.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Matt?
My name is Janet DiMartino. I started thinking about when you started mentioning pumping, what happens when electricity goes off? Really, what pumps the, because I noticed across the street, they have the electricity running and something happened with the pump. So when the electric goes out for 4 days or an hour or two, what happens to the pumps? What keeps the pumps going?
So the main pump station, the one that is, the central pump station will have a generator. So the large station where all the gravity lines are draining to will have a generator with it. So those pump stations will remain. The individual grinder pumps, I don't think, Ken, we're contemplating any generators on individual properties, right? Excuse me?
They'll have a receptacle, so you plug in the generator,
Okay.
as well as storage capacity for.
All right. So what Ken was just telling me is that, when we build these, there's going to be a certain amount of capacity in there so that it's not like every time you flush the toilet, the pump has to turn on, right? So will be a certain amount of capacity that will last for a certain period of time, and each pump will have a receptacle on it so that if you had a generator, you can plug that generator in to that receptacle. But absent those conditions, you'd need to wait for the power to come back on in order to, convey that wastewater. But the size of those wet wells are not insignificant in that it can handle, a number of days worth of flow before those you would wind up overflowing. Very similar to people who have an existing pump system that on their septics where they're pumping up hills. That's a very similar thing. There's a certain amount of capacity to build up in that tank of like a reserve to accommodate those kind of conditions.
And we would hope our outages become less and less as NYSEG and the tree companies have been working in this town for the last year, trimming trees, and we have noticed reduction in outages and the length of time of outages. So to Joe's point, that should you experience an outage, your system should have enough capacity that could handle your effluent until your power gets restored.
Yeah. And Councilman Sirico just kind of whispered in my ear, and he's right about this, is that in Lincolndale, you're on wells, right? So if you're out of power, your well's not going to be pumping water, so it's not really an issue, right? If you're in Shenorock, we'll have the capacity, as Rick and I just mentioned, to accommodate some storage before it would start becoming an issue.
Thank you.
All right, thank you, ma'am. All right, is there anyone else for comment? Okay.
Hi, good evening. My name's Tony Beadle. I live at 21 Locust Drive in Lake Lincolndale. To that last point about if the lights are out, then the septic system doesn't work, that's not quite accurate. We routinely fill our bathtub so that we can flush our toilets manually when need be. And several years ago when we had the terrible storms, we had to go to neighbors' houses to get buckets of water. I even saw people down at Lake Lincolndale filling buckets of water so they could flush their toilets. In addition, I understand that the state requires our septic systems to operate on a gravity basis. Correct me if I'm wrong, because I actually looked into this when I renovated my house 5 years ago, into an alternative system for septic that did require some electricity. That was a European system that was used in historical buildings that used solar power, but it wasn't approved in New York State. It was approved in Massachusetts, but not New York State because the Department of Environmental Conservation, I believe, had not approved it because it wasn't fail-safe. But what this sounds like with the grinder pumps sounds like that might be a problem. If the power fails, then the grinder pumps at the individual homes are not going to work. And also, is every home going to have a grinder pump, or just certain homes in low-lying areas?
Yeah, I'll just take that in reverse. There's only certain homes in low-lying areas that are going to have them. Those have been identified in the maps. Relative to the law not requiring pumping, I think you're not really accurate on that. You may be speaking about your situation you went through, that may be, but I know the county health department very routinely will require, if that you could pump a septic up and put the septic on top of the hill. Once it's in that up there, then yes, then at that point you can't inject pressure into the system to force it into the ground, but you can pump to get it up to that gravity system. And your first point about filling up bathtubs, I mean, point well taken, and the wet wells that we're talking about will be large enough to accommodate something like that, that kind of water. We're not...
Now, the wet well you mentioned was the individual capacity at each home to handle a certain amount of effluent.
Correct.
Sounds like a septic tank.
Similar.
Okay, so who's going to install that and pay for that? Is that gonna be
That's all part of the
this
cost we're talking about. That's not an individual homeowner expense.
Okay. And also, another question as to the easement. Who gets to decide where that pipe runs? Who decides where the easement's going to run? For example, in my property, I have large stone walls along most of my road frontage immediately in front of my house, and my septic's in the rear of the house. So I'm a little concerned about somebody, digging up my stone retaining wall.
Well, see, but the nice thing about this is that we can't come on your property without your permission, so we're going to have a back and forth on that, right? We're going to have to talk about where it makes the most sense.
What I'm saying is that, if somebody says to me, well, look, this is where we were told to dig, and that's through my stone wall, that's not going to work.
Right, but yes, and we'll obviously be working with you on that. We're not intending to put our pipes on your property where, they're going to be overly disruptive. There are the means, by the way, that we don't have to open cut trench, right? We can directional drill. There are things we can do to get under that stone wall so we're not touching it. So I think that gets into the details of the project, that maybe on August 20th, if you have an opportunity to swing by, Ken will be there and he can walk you through all those fine details much better than I can here in the public forum.
And then the final issue I'd like to raise is actually identifying the property lines. Who are we going to have surveys of our property so that when we do agree on a particular placement of an easement, we know for a fact that it's running on our property and not on our neighbor's property. So who's going to pay for the survey? Has that been figured into the cost of the plan?
The numbers, I'll tell you the numbers we've been using. We've been using an average hookup cost of $10,000 per home all in. We think that number covers an awful lot of things. I don't have an accounting that said we budget. What was that?
What are the survey soft costs for your design?
Yeah. And Ken is reminding me that, of course, when we do the survey for our project, we'll be surveying, we have to do a very detailed survey for our project.
Okay, so you'll be doing a survey anyway.
Correct. And my point is we're trying to accommodate all those costs so that the homeowner is really only paying for the numbers we talked about and whatever that connection is. Before somebody asked me, who's going to connect, and, Ken did, remind me that. I said we're going to bring the pipe within 5 feet of your home. That's true. But if in that area you have a septic tank, your pipe is already out there. We'll tie those together, right?
Well, in my particular case, the septic is in the rear of the home.
And we'll have to look at that. Maybe it's more convenient for it to go to the next street over, and maybe we talk to you and your neighbor about, hey, can we do an easement? That's what's going to happen during the design process.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Hi, my name is Bob Cavino. I live on Walker Drive. Is there going to be a metered sewer bill at all?
No. Right. Yeah, no. The O&M fees that you're paying are the county fee, which is ad valorem, which is going to be a function of your assessed value.
Okay, so that's...
And then there's the town fee, which is just going to be what is the cost of the town divided by everybody in the district.
Okay, so there's not going to be meters?
No.
Any sort?
Yes, there's not going to be meters. No, there's not. We're not going to meter your wastewater to charge you by the gallon or something. No, that's not happening.
Well, it does go on.
And the O&M's not going to be ad valorem.
Well, sometimes Not on our end, on the town, on the
Oh,
county's
county's
end.
end, but
Yeah.
we're not going to be adding
Correct.
more. Okay.
Okay, I got a question for the panel. I don't know how long ago, but I think I got a letter in the mail, or you might have, Mr. Morrissey, you might have stated at one of the public meetings that you were going to implement a program to have everybody have their septics pumped within 5 years. I don't know if you remember that.
Oh, yeah, that's called the MS4 law.
Is it still in place?
Yes, it is.
Because you did say you were going to go from door to door to make sure that people had their proper documentation. Now, I pump my septic every 2 to 3 years, and because of this problem we have. I'm on Walker Drive, so I don't know if this stuff is leaking into the stream or whatnot. So I have it pumped faithfully. But I've never had anybody knock on my door looking for my paperwork.
Because you're pumping your septic.
We actually get an inventory from the county. Whenever you get your septic tank pumped, for example, that gets recorded.
Is that right?
And when your hauler goes and dumps it in the manhole, right, wherever they go, that gets recorded, and the county keeps track of that. I know that. It's not under my jurisdiction, but I've been in Steve's office when he's been looking at that map, and I know this because he said, "Hey Joe, you're yellow. You haven't pumped you need to pump next year. You better get pumped." And of course, I very quickly went and did that. So we're keeping track. I think that might have been a figure of speech, knocking door to door.
I think you might
we're monitoring it digitally.
misquoted me with knocking door to door. We would monitor pump outs.
I thought you said you would go door to door, or you'd check on people randomly. But
no, we're doing it systematically. But
I believe what you say, that it's monitored that way.
Yes.
Okay. The other thing.
By the way, that's been going on for the last 6 years.
I've never. Well, that's why you never knocked on my door, I guess.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'll be over.
I'm still confused about the wash on the septic cleaning. Okay, because when I have mine cleaned, it's over $300, and that's cheap. I mean, I price it around. It can go to $400, depending on who you get. I use the same guy because he does the right thing. Well, how is it a wash? If it's $185, you said?
What I'm saying is
annually.
What I intended by saying that, because I know I just recently got mine pumped and it was $400.
Right.
So what I'm saying is, I try to pump every 2 years as well, and that's a good practice.
Yeah.
And if you're doing that, good practice, you're spending $400 every 2 years.
Right.
What I'm saying is now you're paying the county $185 for 2 years in a row, and for that, you get your septic pumped for free. That's what I mean by a wash.
Okay, so if the guy comes out and pumps my thing for $400, the county's going to reimburse me $400?
If you're in the sewer district.
Yes, if you're in the sewer district.
Well, right. So I will get, even though I only pay
I can clarify that exact process.
I get $400 back.
But that's my understanding is yes, is that either the hauler, you don't have to pay the hauler, or you will get a reimbursement. I will clarify that for you by the next meeting, but I know that, because that was a very big part of our conversation, because we were, of course, having the same conversation with the county. Like, there's people that are connected, that are going to be in the district that are paying, but they're not in the sewer, and they use this as the example of what the benefit is. So I'll clarify exactly, is it a reimbursement program, or is it the hauler knows you're in the district, and therefore he gets paid by the county?
It's reimbursement.
It is?
I'm pretty sure it's reimbursement.
Good, thanks.
Okay, thank you.
And Bob, just so you know, when you get it pumped, that company, whomever it is, they must, after they dump, they have to declare that with the county. The county keeps that record, sends it back to each town. The town is responsible for making sure that you have the record in the town, and that in some way you let people know when you're kind of going a little late. That's how it works. Yeah, well.
But I would advise you to
I didn't
keep all
either.
your septic pumping bills. Keep your bills.
Well,
So do I.
actually, if anyone wanted to come into the building department, we'll put your pump out slips right in your file for future reference.
Yeah, that's right. They did recommend that, right?
Okay, anyone else here for comment on the topic? Okay, I don't see anyone.
Hey, Rick, before you close up or move on, I would just like to, last comment is in the back lobby area, There are two things that I would ask you to consider participating in. One is a sign sheet of support. What we're looking to do is bolster our grant application by representing all the
It's
support.
actually right here.
We have it on
You
the
have one up
table in
there,
the back
too?
as
Yeah, they're
well.
in the-
We have
they're
it
up in
here.
there, yeah.
There's two ways that you can participate in supporting the grant application. Number one would be to sign the letter that we have out back. Number two would be you could take that, we have a letter template that you could take and send an individual letter into the town that we would include, or you could do both. Obviously, the more support that we can put into our application, the better it's viewed, so we would encourage you to do that. Thank you.
Good point, good point.
And I'd ask that, tell your friends about the meetings on the 5th and the 12th.
No.
We want as many people out here and make sure that everybody is sharing that this is going on.
Thank you, everyone, for coming out. A couple things. The next Tuesday meeting is at the Somers Community Center in Shenorock. It is open to both Lincolndale and Shenorock. So come out with all your detailed questions. I think a lot of you guys bring really important pieces to this puzzle that they cannot design this without all of our input, so it's super important. The other piece is, Ken, I'm sure you'll email me a PDF of the letter that I can send around. If you're not on either the Nextdoor Shenorock, I'm speaking Shenorock now, the Nextdoor Shenorock page or the Shenorock Neighbors Facebook page, I encourage you to join one or the other or both. I've been trying to post as much as I can all the details. A lot of people can't make these meetings. We are recording it, which is great. And so to tell your neighbors face-to-face, but also if you can encourage people to join the social media outlets, then we can get the word out collectively. Thank you.
Thank you.
And thank you. Yeah, and thank for all your help with organizing. Thank you. All right, I'm going to make a motion to continue the public hearing to September 5th and and we're going to renotice a public hearing for the 12th.
Second.
That requires a
roll call?
A roll call, the second order calling public hearing.
So the continuance to September 5th?
It's for the 5th, though. You're continuing this public hearing to the 5th. And we'll be opening a new public hearing on the 5th.
Okay, so we need a roll call.
Combining the two.
Okay. Do I have a second?
Second, what he said.
Okay, we'll do a roll call.
Patty knows.
Councilman William G. Faulkner.
Aye.
Councilman Richard G. Clinchy.
Aye.
Councilman Anthony J. Sirico.
Yes.
Councilman Thomas A. Garrity Jr. Supervisor Rick Morrissey.
Aye. Thank you.
And the location?
Yes, location of the next two public hearings will be at the townhouse. We wanted to make this initial meeting. We didn't know how many people would show up, but I think we can accommodate our future meetings. So they will be at the townhouse, and that'll be posted up on our website as well.
And the meeting on the 20th is at 7 o'clock at the community center in General, correct? Yeah.
Correct. Okay, which brings us to public comment. I'll make a motion to open public comment. Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
So moved. And anyone here for public comment? I think we've gotten all the comments we're going to get tonight. Seeing and hearing no one else for public comment, I'll make a motion to close it.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
So moved. Moving along on the agenda, department reports. Patty?
I have reports from the town clerk, building inspector, zoning board of appeals, plumbing, Bureau of Fire Prevention, Parks and Recreation, planning and engineering, tax receiver, and director of finance.
Thank you. Okay, under town board,
Paving discussion.
our number one, 2019 paving. We've been fortunate enough to be able to use general fund to continue our annual paving program. We spend upwards of $800,000 a year on paving roads, and we will continue to do so. What we do, though, we had done in the past, is we had to go out and bond either $1 or $2 million. We've been able to avoid doing that by being very fiscally conservative. This year, as many of you may know, the county was allowed to increase their sales tax by 1%. So by doing so, the town of Somers will be in receipt of an estimated $400,000 for the remainder of the year. We're going to take that $400,000, couple it with our general fund, and hopefully we'll be able to hit our paving goals for 2019 without any future borrowing. So that's really what I wanted to partake that information to the board.
And that's the ideal thing. I think we've all agreed that to always borrow for something that's a recurring cost, it's like borrowing to cut your grass. But we didn't have a way out of it because there's been a lot of paving needs that over the course of years have sort of backlogged. So, as long as we can do that, who would be against that? You don't borrow, reduce your borrowing costs, the finance costs of that, and improve the paving. As almost everybody knows, there's 130-something miles of roads in town, and it costs about $125,000 or so for each mile of those roads. And at $1 million, basically you do 8 miles a year, which means that every 15 years you're basically repaving all the roads. But according to the highway supervisor, the pavement, for whatever reasons, doesn't last as long as it did. So they want to increase that to 10 years or so, and so that's sort of where we are right now. But obviously you got to have safe roads, and this is a good step in that direction. So I think everybody's in favor of this.
It's a good thing. Okay, item number 2 under Town Board is the petition to extend / join the Amawalk-Shenorock Water District to 3 Cardinal Way. And if there's any discussion on that.
I'll prepare an order calling public hearing for your next meeting. Because we actually have to go through the same process as we're going through with Lake Shenorock. However, Exhibit B, if you look at that, paragraph 5, there are some mathematical errors that should be corrected before you go forward. If you start at the assumption 1.5 persons per bedroom, and then it says that equals 5 persons, well, that equals 6 persons. And then all the numbers after that are all based on the wrong math.
There you go.
I don't think it affects the capabilities of allowing the extension, but it should be corrected prior to the public hearing.
Okay. So should we make a motion to set the public hearing?
No, I have to prepare an order calling for the public hearing, which I'll do for September, which means you'll have the public hearing in October.
Okay, very good. So that's our discussion, and we'll make a note to get the petition corrected. Thank you for pointing that out. Okay, then. Moving on to personnel, we have current vacancies on our Affordable Housing Board, Partners in Prevention, and Zoning Board of Appeals. We have an upcoming vacancy for a term on our Assessment Board of Review as well. Okay, moving on to our consensus agenda. Okay, items 1 through 6. Any questions or concerns about any of those?
Let me get back.
Just acknowledge the hiring of Mr. Nicholas Bazito as a full-time road maintainer in the Highway Department, and then authorize the hiring of Mr. Darwin Yanza, laborer grade 3, step 1, in Parks and Recreation. So welcome to those 2 gentlemen. And I think of note also is number 6.
Right.
As we do for all new businesses, we are waiving the 30-day notice for a liquor license for a new proposed restaurant in the Somerstown Shopping Center called Oscars 2,
Is that where-
per memo dated August 6th from the town clerk.
Is that where Summerfield's?
Yes,
That's, okay, another one. Okay, good luck.
yes.
They're an established restaurant in Yorktown.
Oh, is that right? That's good.
Okay, as mentioned, our next meeting will be September 5th. That'll be our work session and continuance.
Can I get a motion on the consensus agenda?
Excuse me?
A motion on the consensus agenda?
Yes, how about
Thank
that? I'll make a motion on the consensus agenda, items 1 through 6.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
So moved. Okay, our next meeting, as discussed, will be September 5th, our work session, where we'll have a continuance of our formation of Somer Sewer District Number 2. And I have a few announcements here, which I will dutifully pass around.
Which one would you like?
Okay. All right, 2019 concerts in the park. It's going to be at Reese Park, Sunday, 6 to 8 p.m.
Oh, yeah.
There's going to be another one on Sunday, 8/18. So that was 7/28, right? That's gone. 8/18, which is this week. So we hope that everybody comes out and takes a look at this. I mean, they're very entertaining. It's a great night to spend an evening.
Thank you. Okay. Go down there, Bill.
Saturday, September 28th, 9 a.m. to 2 p.m., Somers Litter Task Force is sponsoring with the help of City Carding. Appliances disposition. So we have electronics, appliances, computers, equipment, keyboards, monitors, etc. All that good stuff that just kind of ages out. Please come and bring it. They're asking for a $5 donation per carload. Helps the environment and clears out clutter in your house.
And that'll be held at the City Carding expansion lot. I think in the past it was held...
Yeah, just past the
schools.
Mexican Shack.
Right, 235 Route 100. And these announcements will be posted on the website as well. Richard.
On the same day, fortunately or not, the County of Westchester will have another household recycling drop-off day, and that is September 28th at FDR State Park in Yorktown from 9 o'clock to 3 o'clock. They accept electronic waste, so if you have it, you can bring it there if you're not going to go over to City Carding. They also have automotive fluids, flammable liquids, metal jewelry and furniture polishes, pesticides, photography equipment, fluorescent light bulbs, and CFLs, fire extinguishers, propane tanks, batteries, non-rechargeable batteries or auto batteries, rechargeable and button cell batteries, car tires, mercury thermometers and thermostats, electronic waste, appliances with Freon, and expired or unused pharmaceuticals. I've been to many of these and we have publicized them. They're super well run and you can bring a lot of stuff off, which is better to recycle it than to put it in the garbage. And they also have the mobile shredder, so if you have a lot of paper stuff, you can bring up to, I think it's 4 file boxes full of papers, and they'll recycle it right there. You can actually watch it go into the truck, and they cut it up in little tiny pieces so you know that
I didn't realize
it's
they have
gone.
their shredder there. That's very good.
Yep.
Okay, the final announcement for this evening is there's a blood emergency. We're looking for blood donations. The town will be hosting a blood drive Tuesday, September 3rd from 2 p.m. to 8 p.m. at the Somers Townhouse, the Elephant Hotel. Appointments are appreciated. Walk-ins also welcome for first-time donors. If you want to schedule an appointment, you can call 800-933-2566 to schedule an appointment. So Somers has been very generous with blood donations, and I would expect we'll be doing the same with this one. So please come out and donate.
And on that same day, of course, is the beginning of the new school year. It's We're in the middle school. So have a great 2019-2020 school year for all our incoming students, starting before we next meet.
Yeah, well, good luck to them.
And just
Skip school, give blood.
Do both.
I want to remind everybody to be mindful of their speed. The town has been very vigilant on, enforcing speed restrictions. We've had a number of issues speeding on some of the main thoroughfares that have come to our attention. We're trying to take our best effort to have everybody think that through and moderate their speed. So be mindful of that.
And I'd just like to add to that, if you haven't met the Somers Police Department, you speed through town, you will be meeting them. I can assure you. All right, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
So moved. And good night, Somers.
Good night.